Hello, if you're a writer or you're looking to get published, then you come to the right channel. My name's Stephen and I'm a traditionally published fantasy author. Today I'm going to do 20 quick questions about querying, looking for a publisher, finding an agent and that kind of thing. So, question 1, should I pay an agent to read my manuscript? No, never ever pay an agent to read your manuscript. I don't care who they say they are, who they represent or what they're talking about. It's a scam, you're being ripped off, do not go to them. A reputable agent will never charge you to read your manuscript. Money always flows from the agent and the publisher to the author, never the opposite way. Question 2, do I need to have a strong social media presence in order to get an agent? No, you don't. Anybody who says you need X number of followers in order for them to consider you, there again, nobody legitimate would do that. It's a scam. They're trying to rip you off. They're trying to press you into doing something. It's not necessary at all. Some very big authors have no social media presence and they never had. They never started with one and then suddenly stopped doing it. They just never had one to begin with. So that's a scam as well. Don't believe it. Anybody says that, it's just not true. Question 3, do I need to pay someone to edit my book before submitting to an agent? You don't have to. You can if you want to. I would get friends, family, and other people who are writers that you trust to read your book, get them to edit it, and then submit it to an agent. I haven't ever paid anyone to edit my books. I know some people do. They don't feel confident. They don't feel that they have enough skill and they have enough knowledge. If you feel like that, then okay, go for it, but don't pay too much for it. You shouldn't be paying thousands for it, but you don't have to. It's not absolutely necessary. Question 4. My name is similar to someone else's name already out there, a published author. What should I do? If you're submitting to an agent, you'd obviously raise it with them in the covering letter and they would immediately be aware of it. You could go in straight away with a pen name. My guess is the agent would say, okay, if your name's Stephen King, we're going to have to change it because it's just too confusing. Yes, you can have some authors with similar names, but this just doesn't work. They'll probably suggest you have a slightly different surname or maybe a completely different first name just to make it very distinct and so that you don't get any confusion. Question 5, my book title is similar to something out there. What should I do? More than likely, you're going to have to change it again. If your book and the one that you know of is in the same genre, then you will have to change it. If it was published 30 years ago in a different genre, then there's a possibility that you won't have to change it. But more than likely, it's just, I'd go in with the current title and say that you're aware of X, but maybe it's part of the process. Every book title I've submitted, none of them have stayed the same from the original. Every single one of them has changed. So don't get too attached to your book titles. It's probably going to change as you go along. Question 6. I finished writing the first book of a trilogy and it's out on submission. Should I immediately start writing book 2? I'd probably say no, not yet. I'd plan it, I'd make notes, and I'd have some information readily available because as part of the submission process, when you go to a publisher, they will ask, do you have a plan for book 2 and 3? And you have to submit some information to them. I did like a page on book 2 and a short paragraph on book 3, but I didn't start writing it until I'd moved forward with my agent. If you get an agent and the agent says, yes, we're going to move forward with this, at that point I would start working on book 2. I wouldn't before you've got representation because you could end up writing 2 or all 3 books of a series only for the first one not to go anywhere, and then you've just spent 2 or 3 or 4 years writing 2 books that nobody wants to read. So don't rush in straight away, but do some planning, do some notes and have it ready in case you get representation so that you can move forward, and also then shows that you've got a plan and you've been thinking it through, but don't write the whole thing from scratch. Question 7. My series only works as a 10-book series. Is this okay? In the current publishing climate, I would say no, and it's highly unlikely that you're going to get picked up for a 10-book series out of the gate. What you might have, if you insist on it being a 10-book series, is you get picked up for a trilogy, and if that does really, really well, you get picked up for another trilogy, maybe then a 3-book or maybe a 2-book, and then the final 2 or 3. It really, really depends. But I wouldn't go in with anything longer than 4 books, 5 books maximum, but even then that's pushing it. And it's unlikely that you'll get picked up for the 5 books out of the gate. If you think about any of the really big science fiction and fantasy series of the last few years, Malazan, Book of the Fallen was 10 books, Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Apt was 10 books, but all of these are quite a few years ago now, and they'd submitted quite a few. They did get picked up for the 10 initially as well. I think Adrian got picked up for 4 initially because he'd written and planned quite a lot, and then he got 3, and then he got the final 3. So I would start with a trilogy or a duology or a 4-book, 5-book, absolutely max. But even then, I think that's pushing it. When you talk through, if you get an agent and you talk it through with them, they will guide you on what they think. But don't go in and insist on 10 books, because I think that's highly unlikely. Question 8, do I need a professional writing qualification? Short answer is no. You don't have to have one, you don't need to. A lot of authors haven't. They've just learnt by doing as they go. If you think it'll be beneficial, if you think it'll be useful to you, then by all means go for it, but you don't absolutely have to have one. Question 9, do I need to buy any special software like Scrivener or this sort of thing? There again, the answer is no. You don't need to have it. I use a simple word processor. Some people write in notebooks, some people write Word or just longhand even. It's completely up to you, but don't get too bogged down on things like the software. In order to be successful, you need to have this software. That's just not true. Question 10. How would you suggest I get objective feedback on my novel? Friends and family are too close and I want someone to give me a good opinion. I would go online, find writing forums, find groups, use social media, find groups of people that are in the same process as you. There's hashtags on Twitter that you can then spin off to find smaller groups. There are local writing groups and that sort of thing where you have kind of quid pro quo, where you read the first few chapters and give some feedback and they do the same for you, and it kind of moves around the circle. That's probably the best way if you think friends and family are too close or they won't give you an honest opinion. But you do need constructive feedback and information so that you can revise the book and get it as perfect as you can before it goes off to an agent, because even then it's going to get revised with an agent, then it's going to get revised again and edited with a publisher, but that's probably a good way to do it. Question 11. I queried an agent one agency and got rejected. Can I query a different agent at the same agency? No, you really shouldn't do that, because they talk and they will know that you're trying to pull a fast one. If an agent has said no, don't go to the next agent in the same agency, because that's just not on. Don't do that, or don't try it. Go on to the next one on your list and move on. Question 12. My book has been rejected by all of the agents within my genre that I've got on my list. What should I do now? Well, the hard answer and the difficult answer is you have to kind of put that book down and start something new. If you want to go the traditional publishing route, if you still think the book has merit, if you still think there's an audience, if you still want to move forward with it, then you can look at self-publishing and other options. But most of us have been rejected many times going the traditional publishing route. It took me many years. The average from talking to other authors who are traditionally published is that it takes them between 2 and 10 years to get picked up by an agent. And even then, your first book with the agent may not go anywhere. The agent may love it and champion that book, but when they take it out to publishers, it just doesn't land for any particular reason. So I would start on a new book, and don't be that person who's been having one book for 20 years, they've been walking around saying it's the best thing ever and it's going to sell millions, because careers are made on many books, not one book. So even if that one sold really well, that in a year's time, your agent's going to say, what are you working on next? So put that book down, put it away, start something new and move on. Question 13. What should my word count be? I've been told that fantasy books are somewhere between 100,000 and 150. Mine's 160. What should I do? Word counts are fairly flexible. There are averages that books fall into. If you go in and say your book's 500,000 words, most agents will say, cut it down. They'll just say it's too much, do something else, bring it down. A little bit of flexibility is fine in terms of word count. You can be over and under, don't worry about it too much. And equally during the editing process, it will grow and retract. It just kind of depends on who you're working with and how much you need to add to the book and so on. Now there's a cat here. Hi. So don't worry too much about the word count. If you're slightly over or under, it's okay. Don't stress about it too much. Question 14. An agent rejected my work. I've now edited the book. Can I resend it to them? No. In 99 over 100 cases, you cannot, unless the agent has said that. If an agent said, I think this needs work, but I really like it, can you edit it and send it back to me? That is the only time you can do it. Once a book has been rejected by an agent, and even if it's gone through your entire list and they've all rejected it, you cannot re-edit it and send it back to them. No is final. That's it. You have to start something new and move on. It's really hard, it's really difficult, it's really painful, but that's the reality. So the best way to do it is to send it out in small batches. And if you get some feedback from any of the agents, you can then revise it and then send it to the next small batch. Whereas if you blast all of them in one go and just then wait, you've burnt all your bridges straight away with the one book. And you could have spent years working on that book and then you can't do anything with it. So do it in small batches, see if you can get any feedback, revise it, then send it to the next small batch. It's a slightly longer process, but equally it's shorter than you having to do a whole new book from scratch. Question 15. I've spotted a typo in my submission. Should I resend it? No. If you've only got one or two, you made a few minor errors, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. I know everyone says you have to focus on punctuation and grammar and spelling and all that stuff in your submission, and you do. And if it's almost perfect, that's fine. If it's really bad English and you've just written it on the back of a postcard and you've spent no time on it, then they're just going to reject it anyway. But if you've tried your best and you spotted one or two typos, don't worry about it. They're not going to reject you based on that. They're interested in the material and how good the story is. And they understand that people are human. Question 16. Do I need to be involved in the genre with which I'm writing in terms of the community? My answer would be, why wouldn't you want to be? Whether it's online, through social media, through YouTube, through book clubs, through other people that you know who read the genre, through following authors and that kind of stuff. Why wouldn't you want to be? You kind of need to know the area that you're writing in, whatever genre it is. So I would say it's probably a really good idea because you can follow the publishers, the editors, the agents who represent certain people, the authors, many of them like myself. We list on our Twitter profile who our agent is. You can then build up a list, you can read them, you can follow up on what they're talking about, see what they're interested in. Sometimes they'll post things saying, this is the kind of book I'm really looking forward to, or I'd really like to see on my list. So really helpful, so why wouldn't you be? Question 17, what is a blurb? This is a bit of industry tech speak. A blurb is what would appear on the back of a book. This is not a summary, this is just kind of a very short pitch of the book that doesn't spoil it. That's a blurb. What should be in a covering letter? So my covering letter, which you can find on my website, talks about the book without listing the events in the story. I talk about the theme, I talk about what I wanted to achieve with the book, I talk about what I was hoping it would do and not do and avoid, but I didn't say it's a story about a man who finds a magic sword and goes on a quest and meets people. If that, that's just listing events. So the covering letter should talk about you, the book, in a way that's very high level and you've taken a step back from it. What's a synopsis? Question 19. A synopsis is a lot more detailed. This would go to an agent, and this is basically where you spoil the story for them. You explain everything. There again, you're not listing events. You're talking about the book in a sort of stepped back way. You've explained what the book is about at the beginning, and then you talk about the book without referencing beat by beat what's going on. But you still need to explain. You still need to, if there are any payoffs or twists or loops or whatever it might be, you put this in the synopsis and this goes to the agent. They want the whole story. Don't do and then what will happen next? How will they get out of this? Don't do that. The synopsis is all of the book summarized in a really brief fashion with everything really succinctly there, so they get the whole flavor of the book immediately. They can look at it and say, okay, I can see what you're trying to do with the story. Here it is. Question 20, will you read my manuscript? No, sorry, I can't. I can't read anybody's manuscripts. I sometimes get sent advanced reading copies of books to do a cover quote. Those are the only kind of books I will read that are sent to me out of the blue from publishers. I can't read anyone's unsolicited manuscript. Sorry about that. So that's 20 questions there just about publishing and writing and submitting. There's lots of other ones on the channel. Check them out. Like and subscribe, please. I'll be back soon next week with another video.